The email said your grandmother passed away at 4 a.m. You read it twice. You waited for the wave to hit, the one you'd seen in every movie, every memory of every funeral you'd ever attended. You waited to cry or shake or feel your chest cave in. Nothing came. You closed the laptop, made a cup of tea, answered a work message. And somewhere underneath the tea and the typing, a colder question started forming. What is wrong with me? You've felt this before. Not just with loss, with good news too. A promotion, a message from someone you used to love, moments that should have cracked you open and instead just passed through you, like static, like the volume was turned all the way down on your own life. You've called it being numb. You've called it being strong. You've called it a lot of things, trying to make peace with the fact that you don't always feel what you're supposed to feel when you're supposed to feel it. But here's the question nobody actually answers for you. What if that numbness isn't peace at all? What if it's the opposite of calm? To understand what's actually happening, you have to imagine something stranger than a bad day. Imagine waking up tomorrow and never feeling anything again. Not sadness, not joy, not fear. Every emotion permanently muted for the rest of your life. At first, that might sound like relief. No more anxiety before a hard conversation, no more heartbreak, no more that sick drop in your stomach before you open a message you're dreading. Sounds almost peaceful. So play it forward. It's 8 a.m. You need to pick a shirt. Normally, you'd feel a small pull toward the blue one. You're not even sure why, it just feels right today. But that pull is gone. Blue, black, red, they all sit in front of you with the exact same weight. Nothing. So you stand there. 2 minutes, 5, 10. You have no signal telling you which one matters more. That's not calm. That's paralysis wearing calm's face. Now, stretch that into your whole day. Lunch. Which sandwich? No preference registers. A friend texts asking if you're free Friday. You have no read on whether you want to see them. Every choice, from the size of your coffee to the direction of your career, suddenly has nothing pulling you one way over another. You'd expect a life with no emotion to be a life of pure logic. Cool-headed, efficient, almost superhuman. Instead, it would be a life where you could no longer decide anything at all. This isn't a guess. This isn't a thought experiment dressed up to sound clever. There's a real answer buried in neuroscience. And it starts with a man doctors called, quietly, one of the most important patients in the history of brain science. A neuroscientist named Antonio Damasio spent years studying people who had suffered damage to a specific part of the brain, the part responsible for processing emotion. Not memory, not language, not logic. Just emotion, cut off like a wire pulled loose. On paper, these patients were fine. Same IQ. Same memory. They could recite facts, solve puzzles, explain right from wrong in perfect detail, but their lives were falling apart. One patient could tell Damasio, calmly and correctly, every reason why keeping his job mattered. He understood the consequences of losing it in full, rational detail, and yet he could not make himself get out of bed and go. Another patient asked to pick a date for his next appointment stood there working through the pros and cons of 2 nearby days for almost half an hour. Half an hour to choose a Tuesday over a Thursday. Their logic was intact. Their decision-making was gone. That's the moment everything flips. You'd assume emotion gets in the way of clear thinking. Damasio's patients proved the opposite. Emotion isn't noise your brain has to fight through to think straight. Emotion is the signal your brain uses to know what to think about at all. So think back to that message that should have wrecked you and didn't. That funeral you sat through feeling strangely far away from your own body. That wasn't your brain being strong. That was a piece of your decision-making system quietly going offline for a moment. And here's where it gets stranger, because this isn't rare and it isn't broken in the way you think. There's a name for people who consistently struggle to notice or name what they're feeling, even when everything else about them works fine. It's called alexithymia. It's not something you catch. It's more like a setting some brains run on more than others, and plenty of people live with a mild version of it without ever hearing the word. If you've ever sat in a moment that should have mattered and felt strangely blank, you're not broken. And you're definitely not alone. There's a whole field of research built around exactly that gap between what should register and what actually does. Quick question. When was the last time you expected to feel something big and instead felt nothing at all? Let me know in the comments. Here's what changes once you know this. The next time a feeling hits you hard, too hard, almost embarrassingly hard, that isn't your brain malfunctioning. That's the system working exactly as designed. That tight chest before a hard conversation is your brain flagging something as important enough to act on. That flash of jealousy is data. That wave of joy over something small is your brain telling you, pay attention, this matters to you. You don't need to mute that. You need to read it. So go back to that email, the one that said 4 a.m. and the tea you made instead of crying. Maybe nothing was wrong with you that day. Maybe your brain was just quiet for a moment, the way a system sometimes stutters before it reboots. And when the feeling finally does arrive, later, in the shower, in the car, at 2 a.m. for no reason you can explain, that's not you falling apart. That's your brain finally telling you the truth. Thank you so much for watching this one. If there's a topic about your mind or your habits you want explained next, drop it in the comments. I read every single one.